I know what that's like.
Hi,
Oh man.
everybody. Welcome to Fuel Radio. I'm on the line, or on the line with me today is James Gardiner or Jim Gardiner. I'm going to go with Jim.
There it is. Jim it is. Jim it is.
Jim is a performance coach, and I've experienced some of his coaching. He does a great job. And as we've been discussing, and I'm looking at his bio right now online, I'll put this up later, but he has a lot of business experience and also was a high performance athlete. And he's a speaker. He speaks on leadership and branding. And so it's a real privilege to have him on the line today. Thanks for joining me, Jim.
Thanks, Rod. Appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me in for a conversation.
Yeah. Like I said, I've experienced some of your coaching. LeapZone, you coach with LeapZone Strategies, and Isabel Mercier, who's been a good friend of mine. We've done plenty of these types of interviews together,
Yeah.
and real kick butt artist.
I know, right?
Yeah. What's it like to coach with her and to do those group sessions?
Yeah. The Isabel. First off, I'm blessed to work for LeapZone. It's an amazing company, and Isabel and Margarita have really built not just a company, but a cultural essence. It's really stands for so many heart-centered approaches to living in this day, and being a part of that is truly a blessing. It's a really interesting dynamic because Isabel is, as you know, and many people know, she's quite the dynamo and quite the spitball, fire and brimstone genius that she is, and Margarita is the very soft, heart-led. Not that Isabel is not heart-led, but she's a very heart-centered, kind of softer approach, and I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. So it's actually a great dynamic. So when we lead retreats, and when Isabel and I jump on a call and do group coaching, as you know, in addition to our one-on-one, it's a really great balance and blend of coming at people's top of mind problems from different viewpoints. So it works really well in delivering and impacting our clients for sure.
Say just a little bit more about the retreats. We were just talking about that. It's that you guys have started a really interesting retreat center. It sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So what we do at LeapZone is we are a branding, marketing, and coaching company, and so we work on elevating people's personal and business brands. And we do that in conjunction with some retreats that we hold at Trailblazers, which is a 5.5 acre property here on Vancouver Island in Nanuus. And it's an amazing property, has 5 horses on the property, which I'll talk about in a second. And we can have people come from all over, come from the States, from Mexico, Europe. We've had people from Europe come. And we spend a chunk of time there at the property, and we go in and we basically deconstruct or reconstruct or construct their businesses, what they want, and bring in strategy and brand personality and DNA creation of that, and of course how to position that out into the real world and convey their genius. And what's really unique about what we do, Rod, is Margarita is an equine facilitator.
Mm.
So she works with horses to break down limiting beliefs with our clients. We see a lot of business owners, as we all are. We trip on our own shadows half the time, and there's a lot of things for us to kind of work on. And it's truly amazing because we go in the strategy component, Isabel and I, and we're just, get in the trenches, and then we uncover some of these limiting beliefs, shift them off to Margarita. She goes down and has a horse session with them,
Mm.
and they come back up. And when we go back at it, it's all of a sudden they're like connected to this true north, and they're just free flowing, and it's just a truly magical experience. Really is.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. The only thing I can relate it to is I was on the board of a contemplative organization, and the guy that was the chair at the time whenever he sensed that we were getting frustrated or not making progress on a particular issue, he'd say, go and just be quiet for 5 minutes. So we would just all leave the room and go spend some time in silence. And inevitably we would come back and be able to discuss it again, or people would have some insight into the issue from taking a break. But anyways, I don't want to take away from what you're doing. It sounds wonderful, what that whole approach,
Well,
really unique.
it is, and ultimately, it is very similar, because you're forcing yourself to be still and to be present,
Mm-hmm.
and with the horses or with yourself, and just being still and being with yourself does provide some clarity and provide some insight, right? So yeah, it works for sure.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Well, I want to get into branding and some marketing types of things. But first of all, just why don't you tell us how did you get into coaching? How did you end up in the coaching field?
Oh boy. Well, I always say, oh boy, because I'll keep it. I'll try to keep it streamlined for you. I've been very fortunate. I've been a coach and a natural leader for most of my life. That's kind of what I innately have always seemed to be, even as a kid, with my street posse on the street playing football. I was always kind of the ringleader, so to speak. But it first started in sport, and through the sport of rowing, I began to coach. I was an athlete, a high performance athlete for the U.S. team, and I started to coach university, and then I started to coach higher performance athletes, and so I worked a lot with strategic planning. Just like with Olympic athletes in the quadrennial, everything is dialed in. It's a 4-month periodization training plan, and it's very similar to business. It goes hand in hand. A lot of it does, with mindset and strategic and all that. And I took that, and then when I was younger, when I was in my mid-20s, I moved to New York City, and I moved to Manhattan, and I lived there for 12 years. And then I started to get into the business realm, specifically hospitality and entertainment. So I was privileged to kind of start to open up establishments, bars, restaurants, lounges, and run them and create the business models for them, training programs, steps of service, all of that. And so I got to learn how to coach, in a sense, business people, whether they're department heads of a management team or employees. And a lot of that is a crossover, and one feeds the other, and it builds a skill set. And by the time I came up here, when I moved up to Canada in I don't know, 13 years ago, I went through the same thing. I was doing some hospitality, and I just so happened to put that into kind of inspirational and leadership, where I had my own talk show, as I was mentioning to you when we were chatting earlier, where I was a host, and it was an inspirational style content show. And one of my guests in season 1 was Isabel Mercier.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of how I came into to LeapZone, and specifically doing what I'm doing now. I knew I was on that path. I just couldn't see. I knew what I wanted. I didn't know the how. And as we always say, the how presents itself. Right?
Yeah, right on. Good. So LeapZone is known for its help with branding and establishing that. I went through the program, and it was tremendously helpful. You might remember this, but and I tell this story often. You had me do this exercise where I had to write out what I wanted, and that was so helpful. I think at the time I had a job for about 5 years in fundraising, and wanted to go on my own, but I didn't really know what I want. I still tend to be one of those people that loses the plot. But that was a tremendously helpful exercise. I found doing that exercise that I wanted to work for myself. Seriously, it was driving me nuts having to go to I don't mind working hard. I've been a realtor and worked all day long and worked through the weekends and all that kind of stuff. And still I work, I'll still be working till 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, sometimes later sometimes. But it was just that going into the office and having a boss look at the clock if I'm 2 minutes late, I just couldn't stand that anymore. And, but through doing that exercise, I figured that out. But anyways, I think there's confusion around branding and marketing, and I'm wondering if you could
Mm,
differentiate the two for
mm,
us. And why is it so important to, this is, I hate that, sorry to ask a multifaceted question. Let's start with
yeah.
this. Why is it so important to establish your brand, first of all, and then we can talk about, or do them in any
Yeah.
order that you want to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, the common mistake is this: people associate branding with. I was trying to find something that had a logo on it,
A
but
logo. Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me. But people associate branding with a logo and a website, and it is, and that is the peripheral, the superficial um, components that truly make up a brand. A brand is what people talk about when you're not in the room. It's the experience, it's the emotion, it's what you elicit in them. Um, that's what a true brand is. And what we do is we go and uncover what is a business owner or a business, but what is their true cultural essence? Getting clear on these certain key areas that we've kind of come up with that truly paint a picture of you and the business. And I look at it this way. I always use this. It creates a Rosetta Stone. The brand DNA becomes your template for language, with which then you position into your marketing campaigns and things to drive and position and to acquire visibility to obviously convert, if you will, in whatever facet that may be. And too many times, Rod, people want to go, and I hear this. You've been on some of our calls. Well, I don't have a website yet. It's a first. I don't. I need to get a website up. No, you don't need a website to make money. Period. 100%. Right. What you do need is you need to be clear on who you are, what you stand for, who your ideal clients are, right? What your deliverables are, and ultimately how to convey that and position that different from your competitors.
You used one word there, and I thought that was great. And actually forgotten about this. Was what experience do you want your clients to have? Like, that was really powerful when I went through the course. I hadn't really thought of that, and that kind of creates the kind of energy that you bring to things. Like build to
Absolutely.
rock is LeapZone's. That that obviously there's some energy behind that, right? Yeah.
Well, it is. It's people don't buy from here. They buy from here. And it's the same thing. If they're going to relate with you because of some type of emotional experience that they have, good or bad, with you, right? Isabel always gives an example of her Denny's encounter when she got food poisoning at Denny's. And so when she sees that logo, it triggers a response in her. It doesn't matter if it was 22 years ago; it's just there, right? And so it is about those emotional experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. One of the things you mentioned in our pre-interview chats was courage.
Mm.
And we're hearing a lot about the opposite right now, is how fear is driving people. I was totally shocked and surprised when I went downstairs. We live above a grocery store, and not directly above, but there's one in our complex here. And I was totally shocked that there was no toilet paper. Like the toilet paper had sold out. I didn't feel like I felt like in North American society or in my neighborhood that people wouldn't be capable of that kind of fear. But that aside, that's a different kind of thing, because I think and why small business people and business people period are my heroes is because I think it takes a lot of courage. I used to work for a developer, and people used to be so down on developers, but that guy had gone bankrupt 3 times. I mean, a huge
Mm.
amount of risk. They've been on a good run since that time, but it took a lot of courage and risk to get things going. And like I say, he lost it a few times as well, and now he benefits greatly. But it took a lot for him to get there. So maybe you could just speak to COVID and to courage
Well,
and
yeah,
business as well.
I courage is my battle cry. Courage is my arena
Mm.
voice, and I very much like you with Fuel Radio. I have conversations in courage, and that's my contribution to that subject where I talk about courage, and yeah, you're right. There is a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty now more than perhaps ever for many of us, and uncertainty breeds anxiety and fear, and we are all called to lead. Doesn't and lead in whatever respective leadership that means for us. Some it's being parents, some it's being business leaders, some it's being coaches, or others, conveying fellow inspiration and spreading, being of service that way. Uh, and each of us is capable of delivering courage and experiencing courage. We all have these residual banks, as I call them, of courage and confidence within us. And some people need to draw back on that, and some people need to um, revisit these elements of micro courage that we exhibit day in and day out. They don't always have to be big needle movers of courage. The bottom line is we are all capable, and it starts with the mindset to move us forward positively, and ultimately in the spirit of contribution for others. And you were asking about business, Rod. So uh,
Can you give an example from the business world that
sure,
that exemplified courage to you, or the type of courage that you're talking about?
yeah. A lot of businesses have been pivoting. Uh, a handful of the businesses that I coach one-on-one happen to be studios and or fitness related, yoga studios, gyms, um, some salons, and so they've pivoted to obviously online offerings and things like that. But it's the courage to that some of these owners and instructors who are being of service had to step in and show up to the arena because they've never been on camera, or they've never taught on camera, or they've never tried that. And those, when we push ourselves that way, we grow. And you know what? There's a lot of businesses out there right now that are setting themselves up because they've made some courageous pivots. So now when the dust settles, now they're coming back, and now their business is elevated. They're going to have their studio offerings, and now they've created library content that they can repurpose. They can create apps and have yoga and things available at a push of a button, and these are ways to generate additional revenue stream for them down the road. And it just takes the willingness to step out and say, hey, the necessities are high. The urgency is there, for not only for me as a business owner, but to me to be of service to my community. Because just more than ever, the community of each and every business needs that business more now than ever. So what can I do to get there?
Yeah, interesting. What about leadership? Just talking about myself, I feel reluctant to lead. I feel like leadership has evolved, and I think of a hockey coach when I was playing hockey back in the 70s and early 80s. I mean, and football too. You would never get away with the things and the way that my coaches, typically a lot of them were screamers and and a few of them definitely had anger issues and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
That's
no.
those were extremes. I had other coaches that were wonderful that weren't like that at all. I can think of my baseball coach through most of my baseball time playing baseball, who was a wonderful man and didn't coach that way at all. And my rugby coach too, an incredible coach, still coaching. But anyways, um, can you just speak to the evolution of leadership? Like, how do you think things have changed maybe in the last 10 years or so, especially with the introduction of the internet, if that's affected it at all?
Well, it's affected it positively and negatively because
Yeah.
now it's opened up a platform for people to share a voice maybe that aren't really supposed to share their voice or gifted to, but
Yeah.
that's a different conversation. The leadership has evolved, and I it I th- it's evolved. It's interesting because it's evolved along the lines of conscious business, conscious leadership. Uh, Leaders, and again, when we talk leaders, as you mentioned, I'm saying broad spectrum. Coaches, real like sports coaches, business owners, um, even household leaders for that matter, and leading with love. That's been the change, and understanding our, because we're the same age. Our old coaches that adopted that kind of hell of fire brimstone attitude. That was a very old school masculine approach, right?
Football coaches were the worst.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And just fire and brimstone, old school masculine approach, and I think what we've realized, and I'll speak for the men, and the men in my circle, is by bringing in more of that, more of those, we'll call them feminine qualities, but more of that grace component. uh, you're able to really impact people on a more profound level. You're able to deeply understand whom you're talking to, have the ability to get to them and reach them in certain ways because you're more patient and you're more understanding and you have some more compassion and you're passionate. And even I've gone through this transition. I look back at my rowing coaching, even as little as 10 years ago when I was coaching. I was I still let my passion dictate too much. Sometimes that kind of it's my way or the highway mentality, and truly when I brought grace in, and the ability to lead a little bit more from the heart, that's when I really started to make a more profound impact. And I feel that's what happens. I think leaders, it resonates with people. It just resonates, and it makes everybody, it raises the frequency, the vibration, if you will, of everyone when you lead that way in whatever business you lead from. 100%.
One thing I experienced, and I think you'd appreciate this, was my last organization became a coaching organization. We were adopted by a coaching training organization, and then we all got trained as coaches.
Nice.
And so, and so we took a coach approach, and I thought if I ever was in a place of leadership again, I would 100% take that approach where, because in a coaching situation, you're trying to understand more the person and what motivates them, and figuring out their personality and all that kind of stuff, instead of a lot of times, I think in the past, leadership has kind of been, just go my way or the highway, and quite
Totally.
inhuman, really.
Well, yeah, you just made me think of it. You're absolutely right. It was more of a dictatorship, and it's evolved into more of a partnership. And that's
Hmm.
what leadership and coaching is now. It's more of a partnership, and making that person and realizing there's multiple ways to elevate that person, and however that works, as opposed to just do. Right.
Yeah, and another thing I'm thinking of too is, it changed my way of selling. A long time ago, I came across a book that was about more about discovery type of sales, and I loved it. I just loved it. So rather than, and I experienced this firsthand because I worked with someone who is a wonderful at pitching. Like, they were just a great pitch
uh,
person.
uh,
And but I would go away from sales situations with that person and go, we don't know we have no idea where they're at or what they thought. All we're hoping is that they liked us and that they're, going to get on board. And but we really didn't understand the client at all.
mm,
And what I realized, working for a marketing agency and taking sort of a discovery approach, I just realized how well that worked by asking them questions and coming up with, like you said, a partnership, coming up with the solution together. So even in a sales situation, it works.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And that's why for LeapZone, you can't even get in the door with us for a conversation. And I don't mean that high and mighty, without doing a needs assessment, because we want to help and we want to sit down and have a conversation with everyone that is interested in elevating themselves or the business.
Mhm.
But for us to have an engageful, impactful conversation, we need to have information. We need to know more about you, so that when we sit down for that discovery clarity call, we can leave you with some very next steps, impact you, and then have a better understanding of how LeapZone could come in and suit your needs. It's even establishing a partnership at that early level. That's a good point on that, for sure.
You mentioned the word love, and that really jumped out at me. I'm thinking, the typical executive in the word love. That would maybe you
I,
could talk about that a little bit more. Like, and you mentioned grace along the way. What are the elements of a loving leader or loving
yeah,
leadership?
I mean, loving leadership. I mean, you know, leading with love, and it just means that the ego is unattached, that the ego is put in the closet where it belongs. You're having a sense of grace and more of an ease and a flow with which you get into being a leader when you're engaging in conversation, when you're helping someone, when you're having tough conversations. If you set the intention of, I'm doing the best for this person, whatever your intentions are, but it's centered around being of service, it it makes it so much easier to lead and so much more easy to be impactful to that person. And honestly, I've had to fire people in my day, and those are sometimes people deserve it based on certain things, and sometimes they're just not cut out, or it's just not a great fit. And I used to always set an intention of coming from a place of caring for this person, that this is not for them, and to steer them in the right way. And it makes those uncomfortable situations better. On the flip side, when I'm trying to elevate a team and really want them to succeed, even though I know that the owner is maybe watching them and maybe ready to kick them out the door because they feel like he's underperforming. If I come at it with a supportive team environment, right, all encompassing, we're in this together, and lift that person up, that's leading from love.
Mm.
That's having grace and just more of that um, all in approach, if you will, as opposed to outside external.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. Here's a great example analogy, and I'll wrap that up. But I'm not gonna shout at you from the summit of Everest to hurry your fucking ass up. Pardon my French. I'm gonna walk down, and I'm gonna carry you up from base camp with you.
Mm. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Right. Cool. So this word, you've mentioned this word a few times too, is intention. Maybe you could talk about the power of intention. I know that's a LeapZone. It's not just a LeapZone thing, but you guys use it a lot. And you have, like in our weekly coaching group, you have people set intentions. And
Yeah.
how does an intention differ from a goal? And what's the power of intention?
Yes. So great distinction, because intention does differ from a goal. A goal is a action item. I want to achieve X next week. Next week I need to book 5 guests on my podcast show. That's a goal. My intention around that is going back again to my experience, my emotion. How do I want that process to go? How do I want my day to go? How do I want this meeting to go? So, for example, before I got on this call with you, my intention to leave this meeting was to feel confident and impactful.
Mm,
That was my intention. I took 30 seconds before I logged on and
mm,
set the intention. And so the intention can serve us on a day-to-day basis to kind of be our true north, to keep us on track with how we want the day to go. ease, ease and flow, or just kicking ass today. And it's a powerful little tool to
Mhm.
to just recalibrate when we need it.
Yeah.
And Rod, that can be on the micro level and it can be on the macro level. We can have intentions for bigger goals. You actually tied that in brilliantly earlier when you said about your writing, that you had the intention of, okay, I need to get clear on what I want for my life. And
Mhm.
by doing so, I got to write, and I got to set the intention and the goal to write, and from that I'm going to get clear. And it's the power of commitment,
Right.
right? And the
Yeah.
power of staying aligned to that commitment.
Mhm.
And again, manifestation. Um, when we engage from the heart, when we add emotion to it, it's so much more powerful than just an intellectual discussion.
Great. Cool.
Yeah.
I love client stories. Maybe we just wrap up with a client story. Do you have I know it's a hard question for everybody when you ask people to pick a favorite, but
Pick a
when
favorite. You put me on the hot spot. I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
yeah,
No.
yeah. So I'm not asking you to pick a favorite. I'm just
Yeah.
asking you to pick a story that comes to mind of a client that you've worked with and it really changed their life and they ended up having the kind of impact that you like to would hope
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
I'm going to actually I'm going to, yeah, I know exactly. One of my first clients, um, that I worked with in LeapZone. And her name is Sue Potgieter. She's from Great Britain. She's from England, and she found Isabel through a webinar, and I ended up working with her one on one. And here was a woman who, um, she's a gut specialist. She works with gut biome and nutritionist and all that. And we took her through the brand DNA. We took her through. She went through Build to Rock, which is our online program, as you know. And that then from that it segued to one-on-one coaching, and we constructed her brand DNA. We basically built that. We formulated her business design and package offerings, and really getting clear on who she is and how to convey that. And she started to use some of that, and all of a sudden she started to get clients, and then we set up speaking gigs, and all of a sudden she started to get on stage and speak, and all of a sudden she started to get clients, and she created this, a, a viable business, helping people from dealing with Parkinson's patients to the Parkinson's Society of Great Britain to elevating, of families, like, you know a whole family, not just the husband, but the kids and everything, and putting them on their sports teams. She's gone and really impacted how gut health really is the key for everything. Honestly, everything. For different ailments and all that, and an amazing story. And we've also talked about intention. Tie this in: mindset, intention, coming from a place of service. And we started visualizing, we started writing out, much like you did years ago, getting clear, and taking her through everything from selling her dad's house in the UK, uh, getting clear on what type of retreat center she was going to buy, what it looked like. And it's all come to fruition. She sold her dad's house. She's getting a retreat center in South Africa, in right outside of Cape Town, South Africa, in a resort area. It's a beautiful property right on the ocean. And this is a woman in her 60s, and she's absolutely just living her dream. And that's the way it touches my heart, because that's the way we should all end up. We shouldn't end up going, oh, I'm in the twilight. What do I do? Or I don't, I have this. And she's living, and she's just a great, great person, great human being, Sue Potgieter, and the company is called the Genuine Living Company out of Great Britain. So.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to do a watch party and I will put that in there. Genuine living. Okay. I'll look it up and
Yeah.
put put the URL in there. That's fantastic. I was hoping you would mention her name. It's a good story, and I know you have lots of stories like that, and Isabel does too. I did a really interesting podcast with Isabel once. For a period of time, I talked to a coach. Actually, I talked to in let's see, in 2017, I did 75 interviews with coaches, and it kind of burnt me out of podcasting. Period. I've never quite been the same, but uh, but for some of, I got tired of doing just kind of the typical interview, and so Isabel volunteered, and she was working with a client in California, very high level work, who had very high level customers, professional sports teams. And so it was just a great story, and it was a breakthrough story as well. This gal, the person that Isabel was working with, was just at the end of her rope, but Isabel helped her find clarity and what her main intentions were. And it just changed her life, and fell in love with her business again and with what she was doing. And so I interviewed the client and I interviewed Isabel separately, and then put the two stories together. So
Cool.
Those were fun, but it really showed me the effectiveness of what you guys do. So yeah, it's great.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm just going to bring up your website here. I'll
Sure.
do a little screen share.
Screen share.
This is James, or Jim, as he calls himself.
Coach J for short. There you go.
Coach J. There we go. Here he is. You can see his bio here, and good looking page. And you mentioned that there's an assessment somewhere. Where
yeah. So on that page, there's an intro video for me. There's information about Built to Rock there, which is our online program. Yeah. If you scroll down, there's some clips from my TV show, podcast, and the very bottom of the page, Rod, I think there should be a need. There it is. Needs assessment.
Okay, yeah. Great. Yeah.
And yeah, for anybody that's interested in having a clarity call with me, 30, 45-minute clarity call, by all means, I would be happy to sit down with you and go under your business hood, or perhaps give you some insight on some things that are going on with you. And if you just fill out that needs assessment, it'll get in my system. I'll get notified, and we'll be in touch and set something up for sure.
Excellent. Good. Well, thank you for taking the time. I didn't mention this ever, but it's always a little nerve-wracking interviewing someone who's an interviewer, who's been on TV and does their own stuff. But I hope you had a good time.
I did. Yeah. Good. No, it's great.
And you fulfilled your intentions.
Yes, I did. Well,
good.
Yeah, actually, I did. I hope I was impactful. I shouldn't say hope. I trust I was impactful. There was some insight there for your viewers and listeners. So
great. Well, it's always fun to visit with people that I actually have a personal connection with ahead of time. And so, I appreciate all that you do. And I appreciate Isabel. And you guys have been good supporters of me and of Fuel Radio in the past. So I appreciate you guys a lot.
Yeah. And well, we appreciate you, and you just keep doing what you're doing, and sharing your genius and stories and inspiration. And that's what we can do. That's our little part of the equation to make the world a better place. So good stuff.
Thanks. I'm just going to hit end broadcast here. Hang on so we can say a formal goodbye, but we'll end the goodbye.